Today on the Foodscaper Podcast, I am thrilled to be joined by Anna Markee of Markee Ecological Garden Design in Tacoma, Washington. Anna's journey is just a reminder that you can pivot your path and build a career around your passions. She is a career changer who left the path of public policy to focus on ecological garden design. On top of that, she is a mom navigating the daily balancing act of running a growing business while raising young children. And through it all, Anna has found ways to create thriving edible landscapes, pollinator gardens, and rain gardens, all while staying rooted in her values and in her Tacoma community. In this conversation, we are going to dig into that journey, the software choices that she's made, her philosophy, the lessons she's learned along the way, and her advice for other parents and career changers who are dreaming of making a meaningful shift. Welcome to the Foodscaper Podcast, Anna.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I was telling you before, I'm pumped to have you on. Your voice has been vocal and powerful and poignant in the Foodscaper community the last few years. So got a lot of wisdom to glean from your experience. I want to get us started with talking about your career path and the fact that you're a career changer. And, you wrote to me in the preamble here saying that, I quote, "I'm shifting the way I pursue my mission from a policy to direct action and technical change to more personal and spiritual change." So elaborate on that for me. Let's tease that out fully.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think well, okay, and I'll just, I guess, get into the story a little bit. So backstory on me. This has been a pretty major career change. I worked in public policy for about 20 years, meaning I actually got started as like a teenager doing my first advocacy here in Tacoma I was part of a youth tobacco control movement, and we did all kinds of like publicity stunts and to get like back in the day when there was smoking in restaurants and kind of crazy stuff we don't have anymore. But so I was doing all kinds of media work at a young age, going down to the legislature, going to Congress. So it was a pretty early age, and I think I just always wanted to make a difference. It was like, how do I make a difference in the community in various things? So that was kind of always the way I was thinking. And I tended to think in terms of like, how do I make a big impact? So that led me, like I majored in politics in undergrad, initially did kind of organizing and lobbying and advocacy work in the Seattle area in the nonprofit arena, and then went into government, working for a really large jurisdiction with over 2 million residents. So it was really, and I worked on all kinds of issues, like everything from affordable housing, healthcare, stormwater policy, roads, criminal legal system, like all kinds of stuff. And my lens was always just like big impact. How do I change systems? And that is kind of how I think. But basically over time, like a lot of people, you start kind of hitting burnout. There's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. It just kind of takes a toll. So in COVID, like a lot of people, I was kind of getting into that mode of just like getting burned out. Is this healthy for our family? Had 2 kids along the way. And then, so that was kind of one theme professionally. And then on the same time, on my personal life and my hobby was really growing into gardening, growing food, just being outside, learning more. I had that kind of, you read the quote around kind of, the inner and the spiritual side, that too. Like I actually was really fortunate to get to participate in a mindfulness training while actually working in government. It's like one of the best things I got out of it. So began a mindfulness practice, and that really shifted kind of the way I thought about things. So I started to just have more of an experience like with work from home. I'd be like sitting here at this desk doing my work, but any chance I had, like every lunch break, I was out in the garden. And I just started feeling like, gosh, in some ways, maybe I'm making more of an impact this way. Like the first project I ever did at this house was converting our parking strip from grass to a native pollinator strip. So I'd be out there and start seeing the impact. And I was like, okay, this is like my teeny little ecological restoration site. But I noticed the impact on me, on my family. It was like, this is really joyful. I feel very connected to this. So I started just learning everything I could, listening to podcasts. So I'd be like out there in the garden. I started with listening to the Epic Gardening podcast. I think that's probably one of the most popular, which is then what led me to the Foodscaper. So that was really like, that's why being here is this weird full circle moment, because that's when I first
Yeah.
started getting this idea like, what? People are doing this like, for a living? Um, and so, because I remember I would like, hear something like that first season, someone, you'd have a guest and whatever little wisdom they mention, or like books, they'd be like, yeah, I read Gaia's Garden and Botany in a Day and this stuff. I'd like run over to the library and start getting all those books. So I kind of was starting to have this little education along the way. And I feel like this little dream starting to grow. So this is probably, I don't know, what, 4, 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So it was like a little dream, but still felt very off in the distance because especially like in our family, I was really the um, I earned more income. I had a very stable government job with a pension and the healthcare and all that kind of thing. My wife is a psychotherapist in private practice. So she has a successful practice, but it was more of the like small business owner. And I was a little bit jealous of that. Like, well, she's getting to do what she loves and work for herself and have some flexibility and really loves it. And, here I am, like holding down this increasingly stressful, kind of miserable job. So it seemed kind of far off in the distance, but it was just like a growing dream I was starting to nurture. And so the more I heard these different stories, it started to feel maybe a little more possible. Like I remember hearing Chai Ming's story. Actually, I think actually that was on Epic Gardening, the like spreadsheets to growing, and I was like, oh my God, that's something. Like at the time, I was a budget analyst, so I was like, all right, maybe I could do this. So it just kind of started growing, and what finally actually the like final impetus really. So this was about 2.5 years ago things at work and in the family just like came to a head and we were just like this just isn't working. Like our family was very stressed out. I was very stressed out. I was in a very toxic work situation and my wife and I were just kind of like we have to make a change. So I actually just like stepped back. I took a leave of absence at first for a summer and to just try to like start recuperating a little bit. And we had this dream, but I wasn't like sure if I was going to do it, but pretty quickly realized it was like, I don't even really like that work. It's not making us happy. Um, my wife was very much like, I don't care what you do. Like, we just need to be happy as a family. If you want to do this thing, like, go for it. We'll figure it out. Um, so I did pretty much make the leap at that point. We can get into that more, kind of how I started, but so yeah, it was a little bit of a like pushed into it. Like, I think without that, I don't know if I ever would have done it, but I was like, I have to do something. I'm just going to try this foodscaping thing and we'll see how it goes.
I'm so glad that you did. Congratulations on making the leap. That's really
Thank you.
scary,
Yes.
especially as a career changer. We have these limited beliefs about like this is who I am.
hmm
I'm a career public policy person. I've got people who respect me for my years of knowledge and experience in the community. I have high level responsibilities and our egos get fed and we know a million people around town through this network and like letting go of all that. It's just so much.
Yes, it was huge. And I think it took a while to start feeling comfortable. Like I remember the first year, it even was hard to say, what like having an intro. Like I did a little business incubator program here. And one of the things we had to do at each meeting was say our pitch, like our intro. And at the beginning, I still was so nervous to say, like, I'm Anna Markee and I own and operate an edible and ecological landscape company. Like I was so nervous. Am I really doing this? And now I notice it kind of rolls off my tongue. But at the beginning, yeah, it was a huge shift to let go, like you said, of the ego, this identity, and to go from something that's sort of white collar respected to something where like I'm using a shovel. And I had mixed responses, to be honest. Like I want to be as like transparent as possible with the listeners and not sugarcoat things. I had mixed responses from people in my community. It was interesting. I actually noticed people here um, in my Tacoma community and like people I'm a little closer to were pretty supportive. Tacoma is like a pretty blue collar area. Our nickname is Grit City. There's a lot of artists, a lot of maker type people. So here people were like, oh yeah, cool. Like I also do this woodworking thing, or it was very normal. My other kind of professional, more Seattle oriented community of friends who are executive directors or these other things, I could tell they were pretty nervous or uncomfortable with it. So that was a little mixed. Or like I remember one day I was doing a small project for a neighbor, like around the corner, literally like out there with a mattock and shovel, doing like a little practice installation. And some neighbors I had known were walking by. And I'm like, what are you doing? They thought I was just like a personal thing. I'm helping a neighbor out. And I told them like, oh, actually I'm making this transition and, this is my business now. And, they were a little confused probably, or like, boy, I wouldn't want to be using a shovel. They're that kind of like blue collar, um, manual labor piece they had a viewpoint on. But it was interesting because I think the next time I talked to them and I was like, yeah, I'm in really good shape and I feel really good and I love being outside all the time. They were like, oh, actually, I could see that being kind of nice. So their view shifted.
Yeah, it's funny how that trajectory just always seems to happen. Like even can be scaled out to the agriculture and how everybody
Mm.
wants to leave the farm and get away from the uncertainty of agricultural life where, planting and weather and debt is just crippling to so many people who run their own little, or big farm even. And then of going to the city and getting like a job where you have benefits and a paycheck that you don't have to worry about all of the uncertainties that come with the natural world, really. It's like, how could you ever want that?
Mm-hmm.
But and then like the next generation who often are seeing that, or even life, they start to see, oh, like maybe some balance actually would be way better. Like I would like to, have the things that come from working for myself and from spending time outside and being physical with my body and, all of the, of course, downstream challenges that come from office and desk life and being inside all day. But there was one thing I really wanted to just like hone in on more with that quote you said, which is direct action. And just hear if you had anything more to say about this idea of like policy being so pie in the sky kind of dreams. And like this can affect a lot of people. Like we need policy to, break the chains that are disenfranchising us. And we like there's that mind shift that we need to be like actually direct action might be the biggest to break free.
Right. And it's not one or the other, but it's kind of like, so many times like working in policy, working in government, I think in particular, it's like there's so much layers of bureaucracy to actually do anything. Like often it was like we all know like the right thing to do. We know the policies that are needed. This is not a secret, but the layers of decision making, the slow grinding process, it just like it's not happening. Or even just the day to day, like there's 10 decision makers between me and anything ever getting done. Whereas now it's like the direct action. I mean, I am physically with my hands putting a tree in the ground. I'm not like writing a policy memo and a urban forest manual that maybe someday some trees will get planted. It's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go get the tree and let's just put it in the ground. So that like go home and like maybe I didn't change the whole world, but I changed that yard or that park or this part of the area, or I changed that person's mindset. At least for me personally, like that's very rewarding. So I guess that's what I mean by direct. And I feel like too, if things feel more direct in terms of even like using my body and my mind, I can have a vision for something and go execute it very directly. It's not at the expense of policy necessarily, because I also feel like in this field, we're well positioned to influence policy a little more and not necessarily on the inside, but like I can speak now, like as a small business owner, like what I ultimately really have a goal of doing is showing demand, like rain gardens in particular, other green stormwater infrastructure. I mean, all the type of work we're doing should really be incentivized um, by local government. And at least here, it's not at all. And if I can show, look at the demand for this. Clients are saying they want rain gardens, they want to convert their lawn, and they're paying out of pocket for it. You know, that's not fair. We should be changing our code or having more incentive programs, whatever that is. And I'd much rather like be able to just advocate like that while still doing what I'm doing and like show what can be done. Um, it's a lot more satisfying.
One of the things we hear from pro foodscapers all the time is this need for more community connection and education. And that's why we've created the Foodscaper membership. This is our online forum and learning space just for pro foodscapers. You can share your work, get feedback from me and other professionals, and watch dozens of classes in our training library. It's just $29. First month is free. We would love to see you there. You know, one thing that I love, if you haven't heard this story, is the story of Brad Lancaster in
Mm-hmm.
Tucson. And he tells the story of breaking all the laws and the rules and then having the case studies and all of the work to back it up when he went and got policy changed and ultimately helped create legality around curb cuts and other street side water management rules. And that's an incredibly inspiring story. And I just, yeah, I also just feel like it's like we are so in the habit of saying things like maybe planting this tree doesn't change the world. It does, you know, from like a
Mm-hmm.
tiny acorn, a forest is born, right? And this idea that we can't see that it changes the world in a day or a week or a month, but maybe it changes the entire trajectory, you know, the domino effect is incalculable, right? So
Absolutely.
it's just it's just inspiring. It reinvigorates me to hear that like the direct action is so powerful, and to get to the place where you could take this direct action, right? You left the public policy, and it seems like even during that time, like you did a bunch of education to get to the point where you had the confidence to like go out on your own. And the funny thing about foodscaping is that like nobody has the same path. Maybe a lot of people have like a permaculture design course, but everybody's got a unique path to this. And you obviously did a bunch of backyard gardening. You're out there in the street, you know, converting your green strip or your tree lawn. One of the things that jumped out to me on your website was this Rainwise Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program that you did, and or the I want to talk or hear more about that because I feel like it's those kinds of programs that often give you some more like hands-on practical tools for managing water. And there's not a great box who want to be like, I'm passionate about water. I want to do this water stuff, but where do I get the education? Not easy to learn in a book or a YouTube video even. Yeah, tell us about that training and just like what stuck out from that experience, how's it shaped you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the trainings, my experience actually has been kind of what you said. It's been actually easier to get kind of like theoretical conceptual training than very hands-on technical training, which is what I wanted. So I'll talk about a couple of things. So the Dirt Core Rainwise training thing was one of the first I did. And it was interesting because that was also right as I was like transitioning my job. And it was actually a colleague. So I had been working kind of closer to some ecological restoration work. I was doing budget work, but to support ecological restoration and similar projects. So one of my coworkers, when I told her about the shift, she was like, "Oh, you should go do this training." But it was like a green jobs entry level training kind of thing. So I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah, just go do it." It's like, "All right." So next thing I know, I was like out, like I said, with a shovel in a green belt situation. There was fortunately another woman who like had an MBA and was also transitioning, and we kind of supported each other. But that one, we got a lot of really good instruction around the watershed, like historic roots of how this area has been shaped. It was very focused in a particular watershed, the Duwamish Valley, um, the Duwamish River, which was now a Superfund site, completely reshaped, channelized, incredibly polluted, very poor communities that live along it that now can't fish or harvest food because it's so polluted. So we got a lot of really good education around environmental racism, how to be very community based. That was really what stuck out for me. And just like it got me out there with my hands pulling noxious weeds, things like that. The green stormwater infrastructure training part, um, we got a lot of book knowledge. We got some exposure. We did like maintenance on some rain gardens. We looked at cisterns. But to be honest, I left and I was like, I still didn't get to like hook up a cistern. So a lot of my education has been that way. And where I've finally landed is I had to just start practicing on my own. It was like I've done quite a bit of trainings. I started to feel like, okay, I'm starting to get the same information again, or I've read it in a book. Um, and so more and more I started to push myself like, I'll just have to go figure it out, preferably in my backyard than at a client's home. Um, and just learn from whoever I can. Like honestly, I ended up one of the people I've learned the most from would be like the manager at the irrigation store, to just humble
Yes.
myself and I'm like, here's my plan. Here's what I'm trying to do. Can you help me get all the right parts and pieces? Because the books kind of got me so far. I'm like, okay, well now like I get the concept, but like which fixtures do I need? What are all the little fittings? Like that really nitty gritty detail has been a little harder. So I have to just be kind of scrappy and I might have to ask 10 people because 9 of them tell me the wrong thing or don't know. And then I like finally do it, or I just trial and error, like, all right, I don't know, I'm just gonna go buy this stuff and like play around in the backyard. Or even with the rain garden. So just recently this summer, I did a rain garden installation and I was so stressed about the elevations, right? Like, okay, well, the inflow is here. Where is the outflow? How deep? How many inches of bioretention soil and mulch and all that, the like math and everything. And so I went and I had been like stressing over it and I went there on site and I've got like my string line and the levels and everything. And finally I was like, well, let me first make sure this is working. So I like put a hose in the downspout. I'm just going to pretend it's raining, stick a hose up there. Great, water's flowing. I could then physically see what was happening. I just like got in there in the mud with a shovel and was like playing and digging. And then you could back to direct action, like physically see this is how the water is flowing here. Okay, this is where it needs to go. It's not really rocket science. Um, and that kind of worked. So I hope that's making sense. But anyway, it's had to get to a lot more just like learning as I go for that really technical, nitty-gritty detail level information.
Yeah, I think it's so key to have those learning experiences and really hard to get without I'm really hard to get in a focused training these days. Like I don't know where it's certainly not a permaculture design course. And the the idea of like sticking a hose in a rain garden just resonates so much for me. And everything you were saying about taking elevations is like you bring trauma, feeling like I'm in somebody's yard and I'm really nervous about like, are these elevations right? And it's just so empowering when you watch that water fill up and you see like, oh, okay, there's certain water. Like this is, I can play with this like a kid playing with water and sand at the beach. That's all this is,
Yeah.
and it's just so important to have those experiences as well as cultivate a place where if it's not your own house, it's somebody who will give you the grace to move at your own speed to get those first projects under your belt.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other trainings that feel like touchstones for you and you just continually go back to them because you're like without having learned that or having done this class or even just like that tip that somebody gave in a specific course?
A few others that were helpful. I think actually maybe it was one of the very first ones I did was Brandy Hall from Shades of Greens, the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint. So I think it's geared more for homeowners, and I think I have it on my website as a resource. Like I've recommended it to DIY clients because it was kind of like a PDC, but really boiled down and so practical. Um, Videos of how to do, those things like contour swale, how to make a base map. It was very um, just practical. Like you could take that. I used it to do a design for my own house first. So that was like really the first design I ever did. Um, and just step by step walking through. So I think that's a great one for anyone wanting to get started, especially like in an urban area, or if there's not a PDC nearby, or you're going to be working in more urban small sites. I think that regenerative backyard blueprint was awesome. And it came with construction diagrams. So that is something I refer back to a lot. Like, how did Brandy say that? And she's just a total role model, like hero for me. So like if she says something like, I'm going to do it that way. With
Yeah.
the caveat that I have learned, different bioregions, of course. So like rain, for example, it's totally different in the Southeast where she is than here in the Pacific Northwest. So some of the strategies are a little different. And then I did do an in-person permaculture design course last summer. I really wanted something in person. There just had been a lot of online learning, and that only gets you so far with this type of work that is hands-on and physical. It was like, okay, I'm kind of had watched the videos, read the books, but I need to physically see how to like set a post or, you know, all of these kind of hands-on things we do. So there wasn't one that close. I found one up in a more northern part of our state, up in Whatcom County. That was recommended by another like local permaculture designer person. So that was most of last summer. I was like driving up there on the weekends and for a full week to be in person, and met a great community that ended up also being one where I was really craving the hands-on training. We did get some of that. It was also very broad. So we'd have like half an hour on grafting and then a
Hmm.
lecture on, animal husbandry or like building structures. It was I think I've heard maybe a lot of PDCs are like that, like very broad, and then also probably more kind of like philosophical than I was expecting. So it wasn't like exactly what I was looking for, but ended up being maybe more what I needed. Like I think that also really helped crystallize my worldview, really aligned with, um, you know, my other work and practices around mindfulness and trauma healing and just a viewpoint on capitalism and where we are in a society. So I think that ended up being pretty pivotal as well. And making connections, just like having the experience of being in a community of people that is very like-minded. Like I like craved going up there in a way. Like it was so great to finally just be around other people who have similar passions and viewpoint and don't think I'm a weirdo for all the weird hippie things I do. Um, yeah, it was really great.
It's the best to feel like you're part of a community that gets you, right? That
Yeah.
is the main goal of what we're hoping to do with the Foodscaper here. I want to move on, but before we do, I want to like circle back a little bit more to this fact that you come from the government public policy world, and I just would love to hear your kind of like future casting and advice to foodscapers out there who want to interface with governments and nonprofits in a meaningful way, and how do we build those bridges, how do we get those jobs, how do we get that, those funds, and what avenues are you kind of like tracking to get in with your old people and be like, hey, look what I'm doing, like I can solve your problems, and just like be that person who gets in at the government level, because a lot of us like dream of that kind of work, right? More
Mm.
community-based work, working with parks and recreation, working with the city, the the rain garden reimbursement programs that we're seeing around the country, all that stuff.
Yeah, a lot. It probably depends on the community. Like here in Tacoma, it's not that big of a community. It's kind of like a big small town. So relationships are really key. So for me, being involved in the community, getting to know people has been an avenue toward that. So a few things. In terms of what the opportunities are, like number one, contracting. I think that's what you're getting at. So for me, I've had a little bit of that and it's come organically. So there are for bigger contracts, formal RFP contracting processes, and that's usually much larger public works processes, and you need to have all kinds of other insurance, and that's kind of a bigger thing. But for these smaller programs, like you're talking about, the rain garden reimbursements of the world, the food forest design, those they can often be a little more nimble. So my experience has been it's a pretty small community of kind of environmental focused people, food type people here. Everybody kind of knows everybody. So I've just been involved in a lot of those groups for a number of years. And so there have been a couple opportunities that have come up. The first, and this is where I think small businesses like Foodscapers are really well positioned. We are nimble. So the first one that came up was our local conservation district basically was short staffed in doing design work for, they have like a grant program and a self-fund program for this type of work, like lawn conversion to pollinator habitat, things like that. So they just basically were lacking capacity, so reached out and were like, "Hey, can you do some design work for us?" And as a small business, we're nimble. I don't have to go to a board of directors or any of that kind of stuff. So I was like, "Yes, here's my fee, and I can start next week." You know, so that
Yeah.
kind of worked out. That ended up being super helpful because while um, it was just design, but that gave me like enough volume. That was like last winter, so that kept me busy most of last winter. And just to have like repeated design, like doing it over and over again, gave me more practice and then kind of seeing it. So I would basically do the design and then I'd go lay out the plants. It was kind of a homeowner partnership program, and then the homeowners would install. So I was able to kind of see how these are working, keep refining the designs a little bit, even meet those homeowners. Some of them ended up giving me really positive Google reviews or referrals to other clients. I put my sign up in their yard, with their permission, that kind of thing. So that, like, the nimbleness, and then that came up again a little bit down the road. This has probably been one of the coolest projects I've been a part of. And like I said, I want to do more of this, but there was a local group, neighborhood group, had gotten a grant to do a community food forest in one of our parks. And in a really awesome park that already is a former blueberry farm that our parks department had acquired. So it's already like public food access and in a food desert part of our city, like one of the poorest parts of our city where people desperately need access to fresh, healthy food. So I had just heard about it and wanted to be involved. I was, still pretty new at this. And I just like cold called basically the group that had gotten the grant, like, here's who I am. I do this kind of work. I'd love to help in any way, assuming this might be volunteering, who knows what this could turn into. So I was in touch with them, had just gone out and done a site visit, and so had gotten to know them. So I was on their radar. And then a few weeks later, they reached out, and it was like the other partner that, separate government agency that was supposed to do the design. Again, capacity challenges, like that wasn't happening. They had a crew scheduled to come in like a month. But like, can you do this design? So I was totally like, oh my God, this is huge. I felt like a total imposter. Like, what? This huge? But I was like, yes, sure. Okay. And but that nimbleness to be like, yes, I can do this tomorrow. I can start on it tomorrow or next week, whatever it is. Whereas even like a bigger company, I don't know if they would have, or like a landscape architecture firm or something like that that may have a longer pipeline. I don't know if they would be as nimble to take something on like that. So that ended up being just a really awesome opportunity to do that design, to work with parks and some other community groups. We got that installed last winter. So it's now up and running and kind of in the maintenance phase, which then leads to then another opportunity that is on the horizon. Now I'm eyeing that like, well, these government agencies, they don't have expertise in maintenance on edible landscapes. Their maintenance departments mow lawns. And so now I'm starting some conversations to try to like build that out. And because as with my company, I'm just now starting to offer maintenance. And I've heard you like harp on that a lot. Like this is so key and how important that is. And I get that. So I've started now after each installation, I send a little handout. Here's the maintenance package, really trying to push that. And then also to have folks I work with starting to get trained. So as I'm building that capacity, I want to be able to offer like, hey, we know how to do this. We know how to maintain foodscapes. We see this in the community. This may not be your expertise. This is something we could do for you. So eyeing like, how could we have a contract ongoing to maintain these community spaces? Obviously, we want volunteers involved and that kind of thing too, but it's a lot of work. It needs regular care and attention. And we want them to be successful to keep building demand in the community to have more of these types of foodscapes in the community.
Taking a quick break to remind you about our monthly Pro Talks. These are free, live, continuing education classes taught by some of the most inspiring ecological edible landscapers in the business. These Pro Talks give you foodscaper education that you truly can't find anywhere else. So join us each month. If you're a member, you'll also get the recording. Enroll in the next Pro Talk at foodscaper.com/Pro Talks. Congratulations, really exciting projects coming your way. And it's so affirming to hear that, big opportunity comes your way. It's like scary, like, what do I do? okay, I'm just gonna send it. Somebody else on the podcast is we've been talking about just send it. And that is the rush and the scary part of entrepreneurship. And it means like, you're making changes happen in your community, right? When those things are coming your way. If you could give any advice to somebody out there who's like, I don't even know how to begin to be the person who the government entities think about when the opportunity
Mm.
arises. Like, let's say you're not coming from a public policy world and you're talking to a foodscaper who's been around just as long as you and they're in XYZ city. What would you say is a reasonable use of their time to help get in front of the right people in a way that is like actually organic and not invasive?
It would be networking. So is there some sort of official networking group here in Tacoma? Like we have an environmental happy hour. It's called Green Drinks. I actually think a lot of communities might have a Green Drinks.
Yeah.
So see if there's something like that. So like I've been going to Green Drinks for a few years. I actually got to host this summer here in our yard, which is my demonstration garden. So that's kind of like a, who's who. And it is organic. Like I didn't just like show up and start pitching something. It was like, I've been going for 2 years every month. These people are my friends now. So building those connect. So if there's some kind of green drinks or whatever it's called in the local community, or volunteering. So is there a community garden? Is there an ecological restoration site? Like there's something, whether it's through your local conservation district or parks or public works, whatever that is. It's just that thing of like showing up. So finding the time, and I do feel like it's one of those things like, is this business or personal? It could be either. It's business in the sense of an investment. Like, so you're not getting paid for that time, but you might think of that as an investment because if you're volunteering there and maybe even on some regular basis, like here we have a role called a site steward. So like that food
Hmm.
forest has a site steward, which is a neighbor who he lives nearby and he's like the lead volunteer for that site. So maybe you become the lead volunteer for the community garden or whatever that project is. So now, especially if you have some kind of role like that, you might get invited to other meetings. You might get a little thank you from whoever, but you'll have a direct connection to some staff person, like the project manager for that site or something. So some kind of more official volunteer capacity. The other thing would be a board or commission. A lot of cities will have like a sustainability commission, planning commission, agriculture commission, anything like that. And they are always looking for members. It can be a lot of work or a lot of time, but again, your name is on something. You're getting that interface with the government staffers. And I think it's important for them to hear from the small business perspective too, because for us, it's like we have that small business owner perspective and just the people actually doing the work. So that perspective can often be valued and helps make those connections.
Yeah. Is a lunch and learn a thing that could be proposed at the government level, or is not really a thing? Like saying, "Hey, I'd love to
Like a
come."
webinar,
No, like a lunch and learn where you like show up while people are eating lunch and give like a little bit of a,
right?
"Hey, here's what I do."
Probably. Yeah, that's a great, yeah, any kind of presentation like that. Because at least here, like there's a lot of interest in edible landscaping. There's interest and it's still kind of new. So I think if someone pitched to, it could be an employee group lunch and learn, even like a presentation to a board or commission,
Yeah.
and it's just an educational opportunity. Absolutely.
Hey, friends, we are wrapping up the first portion of our interview here, but you can listen to the full episode inside the Foodscaper membership. Members get access to the complete episode, our full library of training videos, and a community forum where you can get feedback on your work, and make professional connections as you build your edible landscaping career. Get that first month free at thefoodscaper.com/membership. And thank you so much for listening. Keep growing.